as Sue mentioned, I am Sam Rigby. I'm the social media lead here at Prostate Cancer UK. So a bit of a background about me. I have worked at Prostate Cancer UK now for just about 6 months, purely in lockdown, which has been an interesting experience starting a new job. Before Prostate Cancer UK, I wasn't actually in the charity sector. I started out as a journalist out of university about 7 years ago, and worked at a few different entertainment and business publications before moving into the sort of social media audience space. I did a couple of years at the BBC before deciding that I wanted to sort of change things up and move into the charity sector, which I've been really enjoying so far. So yeah, I just want to use this presentation to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the things that I consider when I'm running PCUK social channels. And obviously I don't know the specifics of your different support groups, but hopefully some of this information will be useful for you. So to start, some of the basics. I think there's 5 key points that I thought of when I started out on this presentation. The first of which is about knowing your audience. So I think for me, at Prostate Cancer UK, we obviously use a number of different social media channels to reach people. The obvious ones: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn when we're trying to reach professionals. And although there's a lot of overlap between those audiences, they're also quite distinct and quite different in their interests and the sort of content that they respond to. Our Facebook audience is a little bit older, it's more health focused, they really engage well with health information and support content, whereas our Twitter and Instagram audiences are quite a bit younger. They're more interested in sort of fundraising challenges, some of our sporting partnerships and different things like that. The second point, make it engaging. I think it's the biggest thing I learned when I moved into social media was it's a different medium, it's a different audience, and you have to write for that audience. So avoid long text heavy posts, try and keep it concise, grab attention. There's a lot of content on social media and you want to make sure that people see what you're saying and engage with it. And often it's about brevity, it's about using eye-catching imagery, just stuff to make people stop and read what you're trying to say. And also, don't just talk at your audience. I think it's really important to think about the fact that engagement is a two-way street. You're talking to an audience, they're going to have questions for you. Make it a conversation and give them opportunities to feed into the content that you're producing. Adapting content is the third point. Always be social first. It's tempting to just upload things that are physical publications and just pop them onto social media. That's kind of the easy, quick thing to do, but it's not necessarily the best use of your resources. So try and, like I said in the last point, often brevity, keeping things concise, taking the key bullet points from a long newsletter that you might be publishing and putting that in a Facebook post is probably going to be the best way to get people to engage with that, rather than it being 5 paragraphs long, and people ultimately don't always have the time to read something that long. So make sure you're adapting the content and just really thinking about what you would read if you were on social media as well. Picking platforms, as you can see from this graphic, there's no shortage of different social media platforms that you can use, and it's a little bit overwhelming. There seems to be a new one every day. But think about where your audience is and the types of people that you're trying to reach. I imagine for most of you that will be Facebook. If your audience is anything like ours, as I said, Facebook is slightly older. It's slightly more our kind of target demographic in terms of the men we're trying to reach, and they really engage well with health information, support information. So that's probably going to be the platform that you want to focus on. But that's not to say that Twitter, Instagram, potentially LinkedIn aren't ones that you can consider using as well. But definitely don't feel that you have to be on all of them. And I'll come back to that later because I know there were some specific questions about that. And lastly, think visual. I've touched on this already when I was talking about making things engaging, but if you want people to stop and really pay attention, use imagery. Make sure that you are using images, videos, if you've got any content you can use like that, even GIFs. Facebook has a little handy GIF tool that allows you to pick little animated videos that you can put in posts, and all this will just help to make the support page that you're running just be a bit more visually appealing and a bit more fun to be part of. So I want to move on to Facebook groups. I know a lot of you will run Facebook groups, and I do think that's the best place for you to be reaching people. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Groups are an integral part of Facebook's strategy, and are increasingly the last couple of years. And some interesting stats from last year during the pandemic: more than half of Facebook users are now a member of 5 or more what Facebook deems active groups. That's kind of the amount of activity that goes on in there that makes them deem them an active group. And 91% of people say that they have felt supported by online groups, including Facebook groups, during the pandemic. You know, they've provided a real safe haven for people to stay connected around issues such as health, such as fundraising challenges. That's something we've seen at Prostate Cancer UK. And they are definitely something that Facebook are going to be focusing on more and more as they move away from the news feed and the sort of the newsy element of Facebook, and more onto like personal relationships and smaller groups. And I think groups are great because they do offer you a way of engaging with your followers in a more personal way. You know, if you're certainly at Prostate Cancer UK, if I'm posting on our main page, I'm talking to, you know, 100,000 people, whereas in our Facebook groups that can be between 500 and 1,000. It's a much smaller group. You know that they're in that group for a specific reason, and that just can improve the kind of dialogue that you're having with those people. And like I've touched on already, groups allow communities to form around specific interests. On our Facebook page, we have people who, you know, have prostate cancer themselves and really are looking for that support information, and they might be less interested in some of the content we have with our sporting partners or our fundraising challenges. So having these groups allows them to connect with other people who share that interest, and I think that's the key to why Facebook groups have become such a big part of the strategy in the last couple of years. Our own Facebook groups. So we have 20 Facebook groups now, and they're of varying sizes. Our most successful are around our Run, Cycle and March the Month fundraising products. They're like virtual fundraising events that we've been running in the last year that have allowed us to continue fundraising while we've not been able to do that in person, and when marathons haven't been able to run and things like that. 3 of these groups now have over 1,000 members, which is really, really great. And, you know, for some of them, they have hundreds of posts in them a day. And some of the engagement we've seen in those has been really special. I think an example here, this graphic, is our Run the Month group became just a really lovely place for people to get to know each other, to take on the challenge together. And they actually all kind of grouped together to spell out the words Prostate Cancer UK on their runs on the running app. So they ran a route that allowed them to spell out the name. And I think that's just a testament to the kind of quality of the engagement that we're getting in that group, and how getting a small group of people together in a Facebook group allows them to really become a community, which, you know, when you're running a support group is hugely important. Moving on. So Facebook posts, I know this is, we're kind of moving on more to some of the questions now that Sue let me know that you had in advance. And this is kind of how to make Facebook posts more engaging. And I've kind of mentioned a few of these things already, but make sure that you're producing content and that your Facebook posts are for Facebook. They're for a digital audience. They're not just, you know, repurposing an entire newsletter or a document that you're giving out to someone in an in-person support group. Try and take the most important bits of that and really like simplify it down to the key points. As we've said already, images and videos will help catch people's attention. And I think an important point as well is not to be overly formal. That's something I've tried to kind of speak to a few colleagues in the past about, both at Prostate Cancer UK and also when I was in journalism, is that, you know, it's not an email, it's not a letter, you know, it is an opportunity to be more informal, to be more fun, to just connect with your audience on like a level with them. You know, you don't need to kind of be very authoritative in the way that you're writing posts. I think that works better. telling human stories, the stuff that works the best for us on our Facebook page is when, if we're putting out some really important information about, we had a recent campaign about abiraterone and making sure that's available to men in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And the best posts were the ones that put men at the heart of that, the people who that decision will change the lives of. So really, if you want to post about something that might be a little bit technical, it might be a bit overwhelming, putting someone's story in there is a really, really good way of allowing people to connect with it and it's to resonate with people. Facebook has a number of other features that you can use that can help, as I said earlier, have like a two-way conversation with your audience rather than just kind of putting out content to them all the time. There's options such as polls, Q&As. These are all in when you're writing a Facebook post, there's options underneath to do all these things. And that just means that you can hear from your audience about what they're enjoying, what they'd like to hear more about. You can host Q&As so you can answer some of their questions. And I think it just gives an audience an extra incentive to engage rather than you just putting out posts each day. You can mix it up, you can do some different things. Facebook is really great for all of these things I've mentioned. And following your audience's lead, so keep an eye on what's working well on your page and basically do more of it. It's as simple as that. If you can keep an eye on what people are enjoying and do more of it, that's probably going to be the secret to a successful group or page. What type of content works on Twitter? Twitter is a bit of a different beast to Facebook. It's kind of a faster, newsier platform. It has a younger audience, and there's no direct equivalent to Facebook groups. So if that's something that you want to focus on, Twitter might not be the place for you. However, that's not to say it's not a good place to publish updates, post regularly if you think you have an audience there. The best thing to do is just really work out, are the people I'm trying to reach using Twitter, and then see if it's worth the investment of time. Brevity, fundamental part of Twitter. Posts have to be 280 characters or shorter, so that's something to be mindful of. And as I mentioned in the first slide, for us, our fundraising and sporting events perform best on Twitter as opposed to more of our health and support information. And in short, as I said with Facebook, the secret to good tweets is keeping things concise, keeping things easy to understand, and making sure they are visually appealing. Is it worth paying for adverts? I thought this was a really interesting question, and it's kind of a hard one to answer generally because it really does depend on your specific situation, your specific support group. But ultimately, it will depend on your budget and your goals, but it can be an effective strategy. It's something we do a lot at Prostate Cancer UK, but there's definitely questions I would advise you to really ask yourself before you do that. Facebook allows you to boost posts to people by age, location, interests. So it is quite technical. It's quite advanced and sophisticated in how it lets you target certain people. But as I said, have a clear idea of why you're going to put money behind the specific post. Do you want more of your current audience to see a post? Are you trying to reach a specific type of person? Do you want to reach new people who haven't found your page yet? And answering all these questions will determine whether you should put money behind something and which demographic you should be targeting. And I think it's also worth thinking as well, if money is a difficult thing and you want to find more organic ways of reaching more people, is try and find other support groups, other pages that have overlapping interests, and see if they will post about the work you're doing. That's something that I know that we do at Prostate Cancer UK. We love to post about different support groups and what they're doing, and specifically about different sort of demographics of people that are affected by prostate cancer. That can be a way of reaching a bigger audience as opposed to just kind of putting money behind it if that's not something you're able to do. And some of the other questions that I wanted to touch on before I hand back to Sue, is it better to have an open page or a closed group? I think I've kind of answered that throughout this presentation, but it is a hard one to answer because it does depend on the size of your audience and who you're trying to reach. My instinct is that a support group probably works better as a group rather than a page. And ultimately, I think the best groups are closed groups. They're groups that you have to ask to join rather than ones that anyone can join. I think you keep a better quality of community, and you avoid the potential for people to come in and start posting spam and posting unhelpful information. So yeah, I think if you can run a Facebook group, you can admit people, you can get information about those people before they join. That's the secret to a really successful Facebook group. Is it worth investing time in LinkedIn? This is a difficult one. Overall, I would say as a support group, probably not, unless you are specifically trying to reach a professional audience. Again, like I said about all social platforms, you just have to think about, is this a platform where the people I'm trying to reach are going to be on? And if it's not a professional audience, you're probably best focusing your time on Facebook, which, as I said, is going to be the main driver of any engagement for a support group. One of the other questions that came in was about TikTok. Should we be on TikTok? So this is kind of the social media channel of the moment. Everyone is talking about TikTok. It's a very, very interesting platform, but it's also a very young platform. The majority of people on TikTok are aged between 16 and 24. So it's probably not the right channel for a prostate cancer support group. But if you like things that you've heard about TikTok, there are other platforms that do things similar. Instagram, for example, has a slightly older audience, and you can do a lot of the things that you can do on TikTok on Instagram. So yeah, I wouldn't advise going on TikTok, but Instagram could be something that you could do if you wanted to try a new platform. And with that, I'm able to answer any more questions and hand it back to Sue.